But my second Saturn return had a couple of extra themes on top of that I didn't expect, and I would have preferred not to have to deal with. You see how my natal Saturn is in the 8th house? One of the things the 8th house rules is research and undercover work. As some of you now know, that's exactly what I was up to get to the bottom of a church scandal. Sagittarius rules churches. Saturn does things slowly. I took my time about it, weighing all the evidence, because whatever decision I made, in the end, I was going to have to live with it. Who did I want to ally myself with? Saturn makes you very meticulous. Each Saturn transit through a sign lasts for approximately 2.5 years. But there's another transit that is even longer, called Sade Sati, which lasts 7.5 years. That's what Sade Sati means, 7.5. This is what happens when Saturn comes around to the sign immediately before your moon sign, continues over your moon sign, and through the sign immediately after it. It takes that long for Saturn to get through all 3 signs, one after the other. Now, what can make this so difficult and so dreaded is because the moon sign represents your emotional nature, how it feels to be you. Bring Saturn into that mix, and it's a super heavy influence. Everything is going to land harder because you're feeling things so deeply. It can feel like everybody's against you, often for no good reason. When shit happens, it may be hard for you to see what help is available to you, or you may not know how to ask for it. So, you see how my moon sign is in Aquarius? A Sade Sati is going to happen every time Saturn wanders through Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces, which means for me, as soon as a Saturn return finishes, a Sade Sati begins. It just started, and it won't end until I turn 68, which also means I've been through this twice before. The first time, I was just a wee bairn in elementary school. The second time, relatively new to the workforce, working as a church secretary. So when I saw this wandering star sneaking up on me, I took a look at these last 2 times and asked myself what themes were common to both. What happened then? I observed there was a lot of blame going on. People making me out to be a total fuck-up, reprimanding me for everything, insults landing like spears that I couldn't pull out, couldn't do anything right, trying desperately to please people, but nothing ever worked. The first time was in school, the second time in work. That second time, I was treated so brutally, it was the closest I ever came to suicide before or since. And I said, this is going to come around again. Somebody is going to come gunning for me. I have no idea how, who, or why, but I have to watch and be ready. Know what resources I can call upon very quickly. After 6 decades on this planet, I hope to God by now I have enough arrows to be able to fight back, and nobody can get away with utterly crushing me ever again. So, Capricorn transit began at the end of January. The pandemic began in the United States at the same time. By the middle of March, the lockdown began. 6 weeks after that, end of April, as the lockdown dragged on with no end in sight. I found myself in the grip of a very weird depression. I told you Saturn is emotionally heavy when it contacts the moon. It would start in my throat as a lump that felt like a walnut. But when I palpated my own thyroid, I couldn't feel any nodes that would account for it. It would work its way down to my heart, solar plexus, and stomach, and by the time it reached my gut, I was completely eviscerated, barely able to even stand up. I couldn't believe it. I thought it might be brought on by the protracted quarantine, or that I was empathically absorbing the mood of the elderly stroke patient that I've been caring for. I started taking more B12 to try to hold it off. I had my acupuncturist treat me for it, but relief was only temporary. By the middle of June, when restrictions were lifted enough to allow some travel again, that's when I got a friendly phone call from a county police department in another state, asking me would I come there and answer some questions regarding things that had been happening at the other place. Well, I thought they were going to ask me what I knew about accusations against somebody who lives there, who now has a criminal record, and that case is ongoing. But the policeman never asked me about any of that. Turns out they had a copy of the final report from my investigation from a year ago. Next thing I knew, I was arrested for violation of the state's Wiretap Act. I was put in handcuffs, went through mugshots, fingerprinting, the whole bit, charged with 11 counts of a third-degree felony. Talk about your apocalypse bingo card. Tempting as it was to panic babble, I went straight to poker face. Because I knew you shouldn't say one word if you're the subject of an investigation until you can get your counsel. I am patient and disciplined to hold out until then. So I'm sitting there in handcuffs, the best dressed felon they'd probably ever seen, my heart racing like a rabbit, waiting about 4 hours before they could bring me to the arraignment judge, trying to hold myself together. And I realized this is the Sade Sati. I never dreamed the attack would come from this direction, but it fits the pattern exactly. Think, what have I got? Who can I call upon to help me beat this rap? This can't possibly be as bad as they're making it sound. I'm 61 years old, 0 criminal record prior to this. Surely that's got to work in my favor. So many grievances from so many other people, and I'm the one who gets arrested? What am I, some kind of sacrificial lamb? By sundown that night, I was released on $40,000 bail with orders to return for a preliminary bail hearing. The date for that gave me enough time to lawyer up, and I knew exactly who to call, someone who already knew about everything that had happened at the other place over the past few years, which would save us both time and money in bringing him up to speed on my case. Everybody was shocked. Some people said, but you're the most straight-arrow person I know. Throughout July, my lawyer and I put together an airtight defense with plenty of documented evidence that the reason I'd made those undercover recordings was because I had reasonable suspicion, according to how the wiretap law is written, that I was likely to be assaulted if my conversations with those people had turned ugly. And I would need proof if that happened, so it would not just be my word against theirs. That's the exception to the law. Simultaneously with doing this, I read a testimony from a friend who had nothing to do with any of this, about a shamanic healing that she had just experienced. And suddenly it hit me. Those bizarre depressive symptoms I'd been having were a psychic attack on top of a legal attack. Let's face it, this kind of retaliation is about as evil eye as you can get. And I also intuited, once I figured this out, it wasn't coming directly from the founder. Ironically, he can certainly do a big number on somebody who's standing right in front of him, but he has zero capacity to cast anything at a distance. For that, he would need to be aided and abetted. And I could guess which among them has sufficient wattage to be able to throw some super bad mojo. I contacted that shaman my friend had mentioned, and she got the curse extracted and reversed just in time for me to go to court. At the end of the day, the district attorney decided the case against me did not have enough merit to go to trial. Since it didn't involve drugs, guns, or blood, it wasn't worth her time. She offered my lawyer and me an alternative solution, pleading no contest to one count, dropping the other 10 counts, and putting me on probation. Which basically means, yes, I admit that I did it, but no, I didn't do anything wrong. No trial, no jail, no bail. It would even protect me in the future if the other place tried to sue me in a civil case. Any judge would look at it and say, look, she already pleaded no contest to this. There's nothing else you can do, and throw the case out. According to what my lawyer told me, when the DA presented her decision to the board, they erupted in outrage, and one of them even stormed out of the room. They wanted to see me strung up from a gibbet. They thought sure they had me dead to rights. Couldn't believe I got off with a slap on the wrist. Crikey, with friends like this, who needs enemies? But every possible line of attack, both psychic and legal, is now blocked to them. Moral of the story, if you are under Saturn's baleful eye, the best advice I can give you is cultivate allies. Know who you can call upon for help. Don't try to go it alone. Saturn is the planet of isolation. Your enemy will try to isolate you, make you feel like you have nowhere to turn. Don't let that happen. Make sure you have good people in your corner. Now, I've still got a long way to go on this Sade Sati, and there's apt to be more attacks coming from other directions, but at least for now, I've proven that this strategy works. So I'd like to close with 2 mantras that are considered to be good remedies for Saturnish issues. And I'll put them in the list of slides that will go in with the recording. You would recite the Ganesha mantra first, 108 times, because he's the gatekeeper to all the other gods. Then follow it with 108 repetitions of Om Shaneesh-charaya Namaha. But for super serious adversity, contractions, or limitations, you'll want to use the great mantra of Saturn. This requires a truly religious commitment because you have to recite it 23,000 times. Nilanjana basam, Ravee putram yema grajam, Chaya martanda sambootam, Tahm namahmee sanee charam. If you can do that 108 times per day for 213 days, you can complete the practice in 7 months. Doing these mantras helps you internalize the intelligence that the planet is trying to give you. And other mantras for the other planets are included in the spreadsheets that will also be included with the recordings. So I hope this was enlightening for you all. And if you want to find out more about your own Vedic astrology chart, you know where to find me on Book of Faces. Namaste. I think I can unmute people.
Thanks, Rosanna.
All right, thank you, Robin. Hope you all had fun with this. I know at least Cherax had to cut out early because he had to set up for his own workshop, which is happening now. But I hope this was all enlightening for you. And I actually just barely managed to get it in under the wire.
I know, good timing there.
Is there a place to get